Hi everyone, my name is Anna-Marie and I want to extend a very warm welcome to you. I pray that my message will really speak into your life, and I pray the Holy Spirit would show you the point or two which you can take away into your everyday. In my last video, I finished by saying that Moses had to run for his life. He came to Midian, and there he became a refugee. You may have asked yourself, well, what did this last episode show about the topic of insights into Father's heart? This is what this series is called. Well, today I hope you will get a glimpse of that. Moses now was out of his familiar surroundings, out of his comfort zone. Here he was, a refugee living in a foreign land. Maybe you are a person who right now is out of everything which is familiar to you. You feel very much out of your comfort zone. Maybe you are a refugee and you had to come to a foreign land and everything around you is unfamiliar to you. Then I want you to hear that God is with you because He's a God who sees, hears, and understands. He's there to comfort and bless you. He has a hope and a future for you because He is the God of all hope. Let's look at the goodness of God towards Moses. This will give us a really good insight into Father's heart. Having arrived in Midian, he now settled down by a well. That was the place where he first saw some girls who came to get water for their father's sheep. And then he saw some men come who were shepherds, and they drove these girls away. So he did what he would naturally do. He got up and defended the girls. He rescued them. This time, though, he didn't kill nor chastise the offender. He may already have learned a thing or two on the way. Back then, he wanted to do a quick fix, moved by the emotion of anger. And he came to see that this didn't work. In fact, it backfired on him. I sense that some of you may be able to identify in this with Moses. You may be someone allowing yourself to be swept away by strong emotions, maybe to achieve a quick fix. Or maybe you have been carrying deep pain which has been inflicted by somebody else. Maybe you have a blocked goal. Whatever the reason, I would encourage you to face that emotion, to look at it, and to ask the Lord to help you deal with this, so that you know how you can control that strong emotion of anger. So these girls, the daughters of Reuel, as he is called, and later we know him also by the name of Jethro. That's probably more familiar to us. They came back home and their father asked, "Wow, how come you're so early?" So the girls explained, well, there was this Egyptian man and he rescued us from these shepherds, and also he drew water from the well and then he gave our sheep to drink. So the father said, "Wow, that's great. So where is he? Why on earth didn't you bring him back home?" Reuel wanted to show gratitude to Moses. So he invited him to his house to eat and then to stay with them as a family. That so well shows Father's heart, because God says that he wants to bring the lonely into families. However, that wasn't all. As a cherry on the cake, as we say in my country, Ruel gave him one of his daughters as a wife, with whom he later had 2 sons. And in addition, he gave Moses a job in his family business. He was to look after his sheep. Well, Moses was given a purpose for his life, and that is something which is so important for all of us, to have a purpose in life. Moses was not just invited to any old family. He was invited by a man whose name means friend of God. Coincidence? I don't think so. Notice, he was invited without questions. He was accepted as he was, taken at face value. He received the very best of Middle Eastern hospitality. This whole scenario should give us a very big insight into Father's heart. Well, now, you may be someone who never had to run for his life. And really you don't know what it means to be away from everything familiar. My question to you is your heart moved by compassion for those who are foreigners, refugees in your country? Have you thought of extending a warm welcome to them, like Ruel did, the friend of God? The Holy Spirit will give you creative ideas and ways to show you how you can love the strangers. For many years, we as a family opened our hearts, our hands, and our home towards those who were strangers in a strange land. It was not difficult. We showed interest in them as a people, interest in their background, their culture, their language. We gave them to eat. We invited them to our feasts. We gave them time. We shared good news with them. But most of all, we just loved them. As a result, we were greatly enriched and blessed as a family. In the next few minutes, I want us to glean something from this story, a few more points from this story. Please listen out to these points as I speak about the following steps. These points are learning to love and care, learning to serve, learning faithfulness in the daily grind, learning to live in a new culture, preparation in the desert, allowing the process, choices, consequences, timing. These are the points I want to talk about. So Moses was now in a place where he received love and care, and where he could learn to love and care for his own family. Day in and day out, he looked after sheep who were not his own. They belonged to another. He was working for his keep. No longer was he served hand and foot, like no doubt he was back in Egypt. What an excellent preparation for him, as one day he would lead yet another flock, God's flock. Moses, the man chosen and called, being in Midian now, in the desert, there he was having a time where he was away from everything which was familiar to him, everything which had shaped him, be that the culture, the wisdom of Egypt, the palace with all the privileges of a prince. he now lived a very different lifestyle. Here in the desert, Moses would have had much time to think about his past and his future, and maybe even think about the people he was hoping he would deliver. We never hear him complain. We know one thing, that he was a man who was faithful. And this started right here where he was, alone in the desert with somebody else's sheep, taking faithfully care of that which was entrusted to him. He was also faithful in his own home, with his family. A very good place to have faithfulness tested. Right there, in the mundane, in the everyday. You may find yourself in a desert place, in a place which feels very uncomfortable and challenging. You may be away from home, from your home culture, with all that entails, and you're grappling now with this new, unfamiliar culture. Though getting to know a new culture can be very challenging, it can also be very enriching. Wherever we find ourselves as followers of Jesus, we are the ones who bring the culture of heaven with us. Let's therefore acquaint ourselves really well with that culture of heaven. Back in Egypt, Moses had taken the law into his own hands. One thing you would have noticed, God did not intervene. Astonishing? Yes. For sure, God would have not wanted for Moses to kill someone in order to achieve his goals. Nevertheless, God did not intervene. God does not always intervene when we mess up. Does that mean he doesn't care when we do things wrong? No. But I believe God wanted to take Moses through a process. This process started right back in Egypt and continued right here in the desert. God used this process to prepare Moses, but also used this time to take him aside, away from all kinds of distractions. He used this time to build character into Moses' life. This was an amazingly valuable time. Process is important for us too, and in fact is part of life. God is not in the business of doing a quick fix. He carefully leads us and transforms us so we can become ever more like him. I would like to encourage you, if you are in a process right now, don't cop out. Don't sidestep what God is doing in your life. Allow the time for him to work in you. Now, this story also shows us that God is not a dictator. He has given us free will so we can choose. We might say, well, Moses was full of emotion, the emotion of anger, and rightly so, rightly so, because of all the things, the injustices he saw. He couldn't help himself. But Moses, like indeed all of us, was made in the image of God. This means he was able to choose what he wanted to do. We too can choose. Were you aware of that? Often we do things by allowing ourselves to be steered by our emotions. But in order to take responsibility for our actions, we need to understand and acknowledge that we can choose what we say and do. The Holy Spirit within us is the one who would like to guide us in our choices, and he will always guide us to make choices which lead to life, not just for ourselves, but also life for all those around us. One other thing we learn is that our choices have consequences. In the case of Moses, he had to leave everything he knew behind and become a refugee. I can imagine that for Moses this was quite a sobering moment. At that moment, he may have come to the conclusion that he would now never be able to deliver the Hebrew people. He might have thought that this was the end. Often we think consequences is equal to condemnation or shame. However, consequences are the result of something we have done or not done. One dictionary definition says, consequences are the effect, the result, or outcome of something occurring earlier. God is not afraid to let us go through consequences. He has eternity in mind for us. He wants us to become like him. God desires that all things work together for our good. He allows us to learn from our actions, even when they were wrong. For another 40 years, we hear nothing about Moses. This seems a very long preparation time. But one thing I have come to see in my life is that God has a lot of time, and he allows time, all the time it takes for our preparation. We might think, yes, time is okay, but I'm getting on a bit, I'm getting older. Why don't you open doors? Why don't you move me on? Why don't you hurry up? A couple of words come to mind. They are from scriptures. There is a time for everything under the sun. And God knows the plan he has for you. In all of this, we get a good glimpse insight into Father's heart, into his goodness and patience. It shows us that he is interested much more in us as a person than just interested in what we as people can achieve for him with our gifts and skills and trainings. There was one thing God desired more than anything else. It was to have a very personal meeting with Moses. It was to become an unforgettable encounter, a significant moment after which Moses was never the same again. This was not a fleeting moment. It was one which stayed with him throughout his life. And that is where I want to pick up in the next episode. If you have been encouraged through this video, please pass it on to someone else. Press the like button. Share in the comment section those points which particularly spoke to you, because it will also encourage all the others who read it. And subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. God bless you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time.